Mr. Ehud Olmert, and dear participants, Namaste, good afternoon, Salam. Welcome to our special session on Israel-Palestine conflict, a way forward for peace. Before we start, let me briefly introduce Nepal Institute for International Cooperation Engagement. Nepal Institute for International Cooperation Engagement is an independent, apolitical, and non-partisan think tank which believes in freedom, democracy, and world free from conflict. We envision a world where sources of insecurity are identified and understood, conflicts are prevented or resolved, and peace is advocated. Ladies and gentlemen, you all are aware that on 7th October 2023, Palestinian militant groups led by Hamas launched a large-scale invasion and offensive attack against Israel from the Gaza Strip. The militants broke through the Gaza-Israel barrier and forced their ways through Gaza border crossings, entering nearby Israeli settlement and military installments. It is the first time that the direct conflict within Israel boundaries since the 1948 Arab-Israel war took place. Hostilities were initiated in the early morning with the rocket barrage against Israel and vehicle-transported incursions into Israeli territory, with several attacks on surrounding Israeli civilian communities and Israeli military bases. Some observers have referred to these events as the beginning of the Third Palestinian Intifada. For the first time since the 1972 Yom Kippur War, which took place almost exactly 50 years before the 2023 attack, Israel has formally declared a war. Citizens and dual nationals from more than 20 countries were killed or remained missing following the violence in Israel. As of now, 10 Nepalese have lost their lives, and it is in this context we are hosting today's webinar. To talk on this issue, we have very distinguished guest, Mr. Ehud Olmert, the former Prime Minister of Israel. Mr. Ehud Olmert served as the 12th Prime Minister of Israel from 2006 to 2009 and held various ministerial positions between 1988 to 1992 and from 2003 to 2006. Prior to his political career, he also served as the mayor of Jerusalem from 1993 to 2003. His tenure as a mayor of Jerusalem from 1993 to 2003 was marked by his dedication to improving the city's infrastructure, education system, and public transport. He was an advocate for conflict resolution and spoke about the importance of political process in overcoming differences, underlying the need for peaceful coexistence. Mr. Olmert's political career continued to evolve with his involvement in the founding of Kadima alongside Ariel Sharon. Following Sharon's stroke in 2006, Mr. Olmert assumed the role of acting prime minister and later became the leader of Kadima. He advocated for creating of a Palestinian state and territorial adjustment in the West Bank, while remaining committed to Israel's historical rights. Mr. Olmert, once again, welcome to our program. Kindly make your remarks in 20-25 minutes, which will be followed by question and answers. The program is streaming live on Facebook and several other platforms. We'd like to request all our participants to drop their questions on Zoom chat or on the Facebook Live. You can also tweet or WhatsApp the question if you like. Mr. Olmert, over to you.
Thank you very much, sir. I'm excited to speak to the Nepal Institute for International Cooperation and Engagement. I've been to Nepal many years ago, but it's been a while since I was in touch with your country, and I'm very happy that I have this opportunity to share with you some of our concerns and worries and also expectations as to how things should hopefully develop in our world. Presently, as you know, of course, we are engaged now in a major military undertaking, trying to eradicate the terrorist organization, the Hamas. Hamas is identical to ISIS. If you want to understand what Hamas is, think about ISIS and everything that you know about ISIS, about Al-Qaeda, about Taliban. They're all the same organizations: radical, extremists, fundamentalists, religious, non-tolerant at all, and prepared to carry out the worst atrocities that at this particular chapter in history costed already the lives of more than 1,500 Israelis. Most of them are citizens that were butchered, beheaded, slaughtered, raped, young ladies in their homes, children of 2 years old or 3 years old that were burned to death, and over 240 Israelis, also most of them civilians, who were abducted and are now held hostages in Gaza. Some of them are even younger than 1 year old, just to give you an idea of how brutal and violent Hamas organization is. Now, I must share with you a certain background in order to understand better what brought us into where we are now. Since 1967, Israel controlled Gaza. As a result of the Six-Day War and the then attack against Israel by Egypt and by other Arab countries, in act of self-defense, we protected ourselves and we controlled Gaza. In 2005, Israel decided that we don't want to control Gaza, and we decided to pull out entirely from Gaza. The Israeli evacuation from Gaza was not simple because there was a serious debate within Israel between different political factions, different groups, as to the wisdom of pulling out from Gaza. There were those who said, under no circumstance can we withdraw from Gaza because this is dangerous to the security of the state of Israel. I was the one who initiated this move to pull out from Gaza because I said, we will have to take care of our defense and security, but we can't continue to be occupiers of other peoples. And Prime Minister at that time, Ariel Sharon, agreed with me, and together we made this dramatic decision, and Israel pulled out entirely from Gaza. So from the 20th of August 2005, Israel does not control Gaza. Israel does not occupy any piece of land from Gaza. Now, one would assume that the natural response of the Palestinians there would be to accept the Israeli withdrawal as a great gesture that will allow them to build their independent lives without intervention of another country. But the contrary happened. The Hamas organization from day one started to attack the state of Israel. Literally, a day after the Israeli evacuation, Hamas was already shooting, at that time, short-range rockets against Israel, and against Israeli townships that are spread across the border from the other side, right? For a large portion of the land. So all of these Israeli townships were immediately attacked by the Palestinians, and over the years it has spread and has expanded and has grown into intolerable proportions. The Palestinians improved their weaponry system, and they were starting to shoot rockets that reach out for almost 100 kilometers from the border. So they can shoot from Gaza into the center of Tel Aviv. They can shoot from Gaza into the center of Jerusalem. They can shoot from Gaza into almost all the densely populated areas of the state of Israel. And that's what they were doing for a very long time. It's true that we have very sophisticated technological systems that we have developed, and particularly the Iron Dome, which is the most sophisticated defensive ground-to-air system, can shoot down the missiles, and most of them are shot down. But of course, when you live 3 kilometers from the border and there are a barrage of missiles are shot at you, and the sirens are whistling all over the place, and the explosion of the missiles and the explosion of the defensive system, the Iron Dome, all this can shake the emotional life of people. And to live like this day in, day out for years and years and years and years is something which becomes almost intolerable. Now, all these years, the Palestinians were trying to penetrate. Not only that they were not prepared to negotiate with us, not only that they didn't want to find a pattern of living alongside the state of Israel without any conflict, particularly since we pulled out and there is not one piece of land that we occupied which can be claimed by the Palestinians. And the international borderline is recognized by the United Nations. So there is no question that Israel does not occupy any piece of land. But in spite of this, Palestinians were not prepared to negotiate. Hamas were not prepared to negotiate or to come to terms or to commit themselves to refrain from any hostilities. And over the years, we had many such confrontations on a smaller scale, but we had such confrontations of violence and of attacks against the Israeli settlements and so on. 8 years ago, we found out that they were building tunnels that were going from their side, from the Gaza side, underground, and the exits were in the center of some of the Israeli settlements and townships in the south part of Israel, where they could embark from the tunnel and start to shoot Israelis that live in their homes in the different townships. And now what happened on the 7th of October was devastating. First, I have to say, we failed to protect that part of the border that allowed the Hamas terrorists to cross the fence and to enter into the state of Israel in a complete surprise. The reason is because they, for whatever reason, which I can't at this point comprehend, I don't know, but the intelligence analysts of Israel were certain that Hamas will not try to penetrate into the state of Israel at this time, and that a tacit understanding which was announced prior to the 7th of October, that Israel will allow more Palestinians to come from across the border to work in Israel, which provides a living for the people of Gaza, which is very important to them because they don't have quite a reasonable source of living inside Gaza. So we somehow believed that they will not do it, but they did precisely what we didn't expect them to do, which is to cross the border and to spread with hundreds of terrorists with heavy weapons to spread all over the townships near the border and to eventually move from one place to the other, killing people, until the defensive system started to respond, until the military units were brought over to this area. More than 1,400 Israelis, most of them civilians, were butchered in the most unbelievable, atrocious manner. As I said before, babies of a year old, 2 years old, 3 years old were cut into pieces and then burned out. The mothers were raped on the bodies of their children and then were shot at the head. Elderly people of 80, 85 were butchered, were slaughtered in the most violent manner. And about 240, 245 were also abducted and kidnapped and were brought over to Gaza, and they are now under custody of Hamas. Now, the extent of destruction and savagery and cruelty and violence which was manifested by the Hamas was unprecedented. You know that the American President Joe Biden came to visit all of the top leaders of Europe, President Macron of France, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak of Great Britain, Chancellor Scholz from Germany, Prime Minister of Italy, Prime Minister of Netherlands, you know, all of them came to Israel, and some of them went to see the townships which were attacked, and they were absolutely devastated. And the unified attitude of all of them was Israel has a right to react and to attack, to counter-offense the Hamas, and to reach out for the leaders of Hamas in order to get rid of them. Because if we will not get rid of them, there is not any chance that ever there will be balance and peace or potential peace between us and the Palestinians. So finally, we started to move our ground forces into Gaza. Now, once we started to move our ground forces into Gaza, immediately there was a wave of criticism emerging from everywhere, from Europe, from America, from other places, criticizing Israel for the collateral damage which will be inflicted on non-involved civilians and the humanitarian, what they call humanitarian disaster as a result of the Israeli attacks. I need to ask everyone, particularly those who say it from the outset, that they understand Israel's right to respond and they support Israel's right to counter-attack the Hamas. What did they think? How did they think we can counter-attack? And one must understand that the Hamas organization, very skillfully, from their point of view, obviously, they are stationed, positioned in the center of towns. The headquarters of Hamas is at the ground floor of the biggest hospital in Gaza. The bunkers where from they shoot their missiles, the command positions of Hamas, all of them are in the center of town. Many of them are on the ground floor of schools or hospitals or public facilities. And the reason is very simple. They use the civilian population as a human shield in order to protect themselves. They don't really care for the quality of life of the Palestinians. They don't really care for the possible ramifications of their terrorist actions against us, what it may bear on the lives of the innocent people that live in Gaza. On the contrary, they want to expose them so that they will be able to say to the international community, what do you want from us? Look at what the Israelis are doing. But as I said before, we are doing what we can. Number one, we need to reach out for the leaders of the Hamas organization, because if we will not eradicate Hamas, if we will not break the ability of Hamas to carry on these terrorist actions, then how can anyone ever expect to be able to do to make peace between us and the Palestinians? If the Palestinians are dominated by a most extreme terrorist, violent, radical, religious organization, when will they agree to make peace if they continue to be the dominant force amongst the Palestinians in Gaza? So we have to react. And what we are trying to do in order to avoid the unnecessary collateral damage and the loss of lives of many citizens that live in Gaza, we advise them to move out of the center, because in the center, as I said before, they have the command position of Hezbollah, they have the bunkers, they have their weapons hiding places, and so on. And they had the hiding places of themselves, of the leaders. In order to avoid unnecessary collateral damage, we advise the civilian population to move out from the center of town into the south part of Gaza, where their humanitarian needs will be provided for by Israel in coordination with America, in coordination with Egypt and other more moderate countries. And indeed, every day now, there are at least 50 huge trucks coming from Egypt to Gaza, to where the residents of Gaza were advised to move, and they are provided with all the needs. But one thing we have to accomplish, and this is to destroy the military control of Hamas in Gaza. I was negotiating with the Palestinian Authority, the President of the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, Abu Mazen, and we were very close to reach an understanding about an historic peace between Israel and the Palestinians. In the very last moment, Abu Mazen, the Palestinian leader, didn't have the guts to end it and to sign. And I told him, here we are, we have agreed on anything. You think that what I proposed to you is a very good, attractive, serious, solid, balanced peace plan. Why don't you sign? And it was obvious that the reason why he couldn't sign was not because what I have proposed was not good enough. He thought that it was quite a very serious and forthcoming and far-reaching peace plan, but because he was afraid of the reaction of the extremist organizations in the Palestinians, amongst the Palestinians, particularly in Gaza. So at the end of the day, Hamas doesn't want to make peace. Hamas doesn't want to compromise with Israel. Hamas wants the Palestinian Authority not to make peace with Israel. Hamas wants the Palestinians not to compromise with Israel, because if they compromise with Israel, that weakens the ability of Hamas to carry on this frontal attack against the Jews and the state of Israel, and this is not their interest. So one must understand that by killing the leaders of Hamas, we are contributing to the option of making peace between us and the Palestinians. The end game of this operation is hopefully Israel will destroy the Hamas. We will then appeal to the Western countries, particularly to America, which is very friendly to us, and the President visited Israel just to re-emphasize the American commitment to the security of the state of Israel. We would like to convince our friends that at the end of the military action by Israel, they have to send an intervention force, international force, like the NATO intervention force, for the Gaza, in order to, after the Israeli operation, to restore a certain level of civil organization and civil administration in Gaza that will take care of the services that need to be provided to the residents. Also, we believe that the intervention force will remove all the remnants that may have been left from Hamas, in order to allow Gaza to start a long recuperating process from the almost endless military confrontation which took place between Israel and the Hamas over the years. Now, only after a period of time that the international force will be present in in Gaza and take control of it and completely get rid of all those parts of Hamas which may have been left there, will the Palestinian Authority be able to come to the Gaza, not on the bayonets of Israel, but on the wings of the international force, which has nothing to do with Israel, but which will be installed at the end of the confrontation. Now, all this has to lead to a political process between us and the Palestinian Authority. And this political process must lead into the famous two-state solution. The two-state solution which I proposed to Abu Mazen, to Mahmoud Abbas, the leader of the Palestinians, which he failed to respond to. He almost said yes, but he didn't say yes. Now, this is something that we will have to move forward towards after military confrontation. And maybe in order to make it more possible, considering the nature of the present Israeli government, we'll have to change the Israeli government, something that many of us want to do anyway, and to have a government which is aiming at the establishment of a two-state solution as the pattern of the relations between Israel and the Palestinians, and also as a possible vehicle upon which we can justify the military actions against Hamas now, because that may lead to the uprising again of the Palestinian Authority as the dominant force amongst the Palestinian people. I hope that you got the framework of where we are now, and I'll be happy to answer you a few questions.
Thank you, Mr. Ehud Olmert. Thank you so much for your remarks. You have touched upon different aspects of the conflict, including the historical aspect of it, and we have received lots of questions. So, without wasting time,
may I say something? May I say something?
Sure.
The line is not perfect, so I hear your sentences broken, and it's hard for me to understand what you say. So try and see what you can do about it.
Okay, I'll try my best to fix it in a while. We have received lots of questions, so let me share one by one. There are lots of questions that can Israel and Palestine really coexist with all the historical trauma that they share? And similar questions are there. How do you visualize the future where both Israel and Palestine can coexist peacefully and thrive historically, politically, economically, and socially, while maintaining their cultural identities and social discrimination?
Well, as I said before, I think that the end game has to be a peace process between Israel and the Palestinian Authority, which will be based on what is known internationally as a two-state solution. In other words, what we need to do is to help the Palestinians exercise their right for self-determination in the territories of the West Bank and Gaza, more or less along the lines of the 67 borders. 67 is the time where we had the war with Jordan, with Egypt, and with Syria, as a result of which Israel occupied, in an act of self-defense, we occupied the territories in the West Bank and in Gaza. So we are prepared. We will have to be prepared. Let's put it this way. We will have to be prepared. The Israeli government will have to be prepared. Hopefully, there will be a new government in Israel. I'm not in support of the present government, and I hope that they will be replaced, and I will do everything in my power to replace them as soon as possible. So that government will have to announce that we accept the two-state solution. The Palestinians will have to accept the Israeli announcement, and will have to sit together and to work out the details of the framework of two states for two people, a Palestinian state and the state of Israel.
Thank you. Let me move to the second one. how do you see the recent visit of US President Joe Biden to Israel? And second is like, do you think a Balfour Declaration is the root cause for this existing problem? What is your opinion on this?
Well, let me start with the Balfour Declaration. The Balfour Declaration was made in the 2nd of November, 1917, which means 106 years ago, almost to the day, on Thursday, will be the 2nd of November. The Balfour Declaration was the confirmation of the historical rights of the Jewish people to the ancient homeland. Now, in 1917, there was not a Palestinian state. No one talked about a Palestinian state. No one claimed to establish a Palestinian state. And there was not any population which at that time was identified as a Palestinian peoples that live in the Middle East. I think that what is eventually developed into what now is known as the Palestinian people is a very late phenomenon, which actually started only in the mid-50s of the 20th century. That is a long time. There was always a certain conflict between the Jews that came to live in the land of Israel, particularly after the Second World War, after the Holocaust and so on, and at that time there were few Arabs, relatively speaking, in numbers, few Arabs that lived in what is known as the Holy Land, the ancient land of Israel, and there were conflicts between us and them. Their national identity, the definition of the people that lived in Israel as the Palestinian people, as distinct from Jordanians, from Syrians, from Egyptians, from Lebanese, is a very late process which has matured only towards the 70s and the 80s of the 20th century, not too many years ago. In any event, we recognize the Palestinians as a distinct people. We recognize their right to exercise self-determination. We think that the natural place for them is where they are, in Gaza and in the West Bank, but they actually signed an agreement that will define the framework of this peace treaty in 1993, on the 13th of September 1993, and what is known as the Oslo Agreement. So now what needs to be done is, number one, to get rid of those amongst the Palestinians which are not prepared to compromise with Israel, are not prepared to make peace, are not prepared to negotiate, and relieve and release the Palestinian Authority to have the necessary freedom and political support, which is essential for them in order to engage in a process of negotiations with Israel.
Sir, we have also received lots of questions that, do you see the possibility of escalating the war with Arab countries?
Say it again, I'm sorry.
Do you see the possibility of the escalation of this war with the Arab countries?
I hope not. It's hard to say that I'm definitely confident about anything. In our part of the world, I invite all of you to come and visit with us. In our part of the world, stability can't be guaranteed. And to make any prophecy about how things will develop is a little bit too risky. But I think that the enemy in the north, which is the Hezbollah organization, which is also a terrorist organization, has already suffered 17 years ago when they provoked Israel into military confrontation with them in July 2006. I was at that time the prime minister, and I was in charge of the Israeli counteroffensive in Lebanon. And the counteroffensive in Lebanon was very painful to Hezbollah. It was so painful that at the end of it, the leader of Hezbollah said, had he known in advance how I will, 1% of how I will react, 1%, he would have not started. So I think that Hezbollah at that time suffered a great deal from the confrontation with us, and they may not want to repeat this experience now with an additional expansion of the military confrontation we have in the south, also into the north. Yet at the same time, Hezbollah wants to assist the Palestinians in the south, and they believe that by forcing Israel to split its attention completely from the south also to the north, will weaken the Israeli ability to deal with two fronts at the same time. And this is the reason why there is a concern about the expansion of this war. And also, one must understand that Hezbollah as well as Hamas are both the long arms of Iran. Iran finances the Hezbollah and Hamas. Iran provides them with the weapons and with the training for military operations. Okay, so the question is whether Iran will trigger the Hezbollah to engage itself in the military confrontation we have now in order to weaken the ability of Israel to act as we believe we need to. I think my personal perception, and as again I have to say that it may not necessarily be true, we'll find out, we'll see, we'll live through events, so we'll know. But I think that while Hezbollah will continue to bother Israel with all kinds of skirmishes in the border, with confrontation on a narrow scale, they will not broaden the basis into a full-fledged confrontation with Israel, because that may be very, very devastating to Hezbollah. And finally, America wants to signal to Iran that Iran should be very careful not to interfere with the events. And America brought here two aircraft carriers, the Gerald Ford and Eisenhower, two huge carriers with thousands of soldiers and with missiles and with weapons. And in a way, they signal to Iran, hey guys, you be careful. If you start now to broaden the base and to enlarge the front into a full-fledged war, direct war with Israel, Israel will not be left alone. We, America, will be fighting with Israel. So this is a warning to Iran, and I believe that it will be sufficient in order to keep Iran from any direct involvement in the military confrontation.
Thank you, sir. We hardly have 5 minutes, but let me take one or two more questions. We have received lots of questions on failure of intelligence, and you have also accepted that during your remarks. How could Hamas cross all the high-tech barricade in Israel, which has huge reputation for its intelligence as well as defense technology? What do you think about the failure of Mossad to predict the attack?
A perfect question. Very embarrassing. It's true. Israel is supposed to have the most sophisticated intelligence system in the world. Is supposed to have the most sophisticated high-tech cyber there is, and how these relatively small terrorist organizations broke through all the barriers into Israel. Well, the truth is that we were sleeping. We were sleeping not only literally that we were sleeping, it was early morning, but we were sleeping because of arrogance, of complacency, and of overconfidence. We thought, who are these Arabs that can they cross and can they penetrate into the state of Israel? And we didn't pay the necessary attention needed. We saw everything, we saw all the preparations, and the experts explained to us that all these preparations, which turned out to be a training for the operation, are supposed to be just training for the sake of training, because they will never dare do to Israel what actually they did, because Israel is so much more powerful and so much more versatile in the measures that can be taken in order to stop them. You know, it's like if you have a bank and you have a safe in the bank, and the safe in the bank contains a lot of treasures, and the bank is open, the guard is not there, the safe room is open, and where the deposits are, it's open, and then you ask, how come you didn't stop them? We didn't stop them because we were not there, because we were fortunately, we didn't believe that they will come, and therefore we didn't keep the military units which need to be there in order to stop them. Had the military units that are normally staying there on a regular basis were present there, nothing of this would have happened, and they would be, most of them would have been destroyed at the very beginning of the operation. But they misled us, and we misled ourselves, and that's why we didn't wait for them in order to stop them.
Finally, at the end, we have 2 minutes. So just wrap up, like, where do you see this conflict heading, and how can we have peace? What would be the best solution at the moment?
As I said before, what I think that the threat to the stability of the world, not just in our part of the world, in all part of the world, in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, in Iran, it's all with the ultra-Orthodox, extreme fundamentalist radical elements, which are not interested in any particular piece of territory or any political gain. They want to destroy the basis of our culture, of our values, of our way of life, and make it something entirely different. We are not, of course, prepared to succumb to this, and we will not. So I think that if we will succeed in stopping Hamas and destroying the Hamas military power and the chain of command of Hamas, then I think there is a good chance that a new cycle of political negotiations between Israel and Hamas will be resumed, which is, at the end of the day, this is the desire, this is the dream, this is what we want, and I believe that this is what the peace-loving people want everywhere. So let's pray together that after the fighting, there will be a renewed commitment to start a political process.
Mr. Ehud Olmert, thank you so much for the wonderful session. We still have lots of questions, around 60 or 70, but we need to end it here. I, on behalf of NICE and all our audience, would like to thank you for your kind presence and valuable time. We hope to have you again in future, maybe in person in Kathmandu. Thank you so much and good night.